that's what I hear when I talk to y'all like, let's not just, rail about big problems that we can do nothing about. Let's ask God, who's just the one person who I can help, and how am I called to be faithful in that next step? So I just think that's really profound and wonderful. And it has produced results and has produced impact. So you brought these 60 water filters in that first water filter distribution. How many water filters has Just One Africa distributed since then and over these 13 years? And about how many people have y'all been a part of providing with access to safe drinking water?
Yeah, that's a great question. I love how you said that. And we really try to live each day open-handed with what is in front of us and what God, what are you asking us to do? And that might be helping a little child, or it might be helping a village. And so over the years, we started with those first 60 filters in 2012, and we have raised funds every year to bring more filters. Currently, to date, we've distributed about 14,000 filters, which has impacted almost 300,000 people. And we have distributed filters in about 196 different villages and communities.
Hey, welcome to the Simple Charity Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Grosso. Forming global cross-cultural partnerships is not easy, nor is it simple. Just One Africa is an organization that was founded by Amy and Clay Churchill, who are my guests on the show today. And I first connected with them when I was in high school, and then I spent 4 months interning with them in Kenya during 2 summers of my undergraduate years in college. And in the field, the global partnerships I saw between their team and their local partners were really so beautiful. I saw this mutual respect and love that they shared with their local partners as they worked together to serve a vulnerable community. And it was an incredible learning experience for me to see how authentic, trusting, working relationships can be formed even across geographies and across the world. On the show today, you'll hear from Amy and Clay about what it's like to work a job with your spouse, something that I was interested in asking them about. You'll hear about the impact of Amy and Clay's work in southern Kenya and how to be faithful within our own spheres of agency. Join me for a conversation about the power of what just one life of surrendered love can do. This is your podcast, so as always, send me your thoughts, your questions, your suggestions at Brian with an I, not a Y with an I, at simplecharity.org. And if this show is helpful, it would be great if you could click a 5-star rating in your podcast app. This helps the algorithm get the show to more listeners. Thanks for considering doing that. So glad you're with us today.
Hi, my name is Melissa, and I serve as a Simple Charity philanthropic advisor to individuals, couples, families, foundations, and family offices in the Raleigh-Durham, Chapel Hill area of North Carolina, but also to clients around the country. If you're curious about your own generosity journey and would like help thinking through a philanthropic strategy with intentionality to discern where God is calling you to love people, to find excellent nonprofits to partner with, or to understand the impact of your current grant making, I would love to connect and share more about Simple Charity's philanthropic advising offerings. You can connect with me at Melissa Hall at simplecharity.org. That's Melissa Hall at simplecharity.org. And you can learn more about us at simplecharity.org. That's simplecharity.org.
Well, Amy, Clay, so good to be with you. Welcome to the Simple Charity Podcast.
It's great to be with you too, Brian.
Thanks for having us.
What are you grateful for today?
Oh my goodness, so much. We're grateful just for the Lord's faithfulness first, but when we started Just One Africa 13 years ago, I was working a full-time job. Amy was working a full-time job. We had 3 kids in school, in middle school and high school, and we were so busy. Life was full. We were not looking for anything, and the Lord just put this on our hearts to start. And the thing that I'm so grateful for today is that we are able to do this full time together. We're able to live our life on mission as a married couple. And it has just been a beautiful thing that the Lord has orchestrated and allowed us to do so that we can partner together to move the kingdom forward and to be able to love people together.
Yeah.
I'm really grateful for, whether we are working side by side in our office in the United States or we are in Kenya on the other side of the world distributing filters together. We're able to do it together, and God has just really blessed that part of it. And so it's just something I'm really grateful for. It's been a journey. Yeah. We're able to travel for much longer periods of time now, and really focus all of our attention on the ministry and the mission that God has asked us to do.
That is a wonderful response, and I want to dig deeper actually in what it's like to work as a spouse. I'm married as well, and I think some people, when thinking about working together with their spouse, would be a little bit intimidated by that prospect. So I'm going to make a note to ask you more about that because I would love to have a conversation about that. But before we get there, Amy, what are you grateful for today?
I am really, really grateful for the opportunity to have had one of our Kenyan partners with us here in the Atlanta area for the last week or so. He flew to the United States several weeks ago to speak at the UN on behalf of grassroots efforts, which he is very much a leader of in southern Kenya and also at a national level. But he helps the world to understand what happens when policy is created in offices and faraway places and what that actually looks like on the ground. So he came to speak on behalf of his community and also got to do some other meetings that were important across the U.S. and then ended his trip with us. And we sent him back yesterday to his family. So he should be arriving back in Kenya today. But I'm really thankful for time with him, those face-to-face conversations, introducing him to other donors and other supporters that are learning about the incredible grassroots work that he's doing with his wife, Dorcas. There's nothing like hearing from the first person the impact that you're able to make when you partner with people all over the world and hear, their stories and the difference that it's making. So I'm really grateful for that opportunity today.
Yeah, it was a wonderful time.
Yeah, I also am grateful for John's visit from the UN to North Georgia, and me and my wife Savannah and our 3 boys got to come by on Sunday and say hello to John, and it's a special relationship for me. I lived with not in John's house, but in a house very close to John's house, and ate every meal in his house for 2 months when I was in college. And that was around 10 years ago now, which is hard to believe. Yes. So we got to spend some time with John, and this is a really special podcast episode for me. So we've had conversations on the Simple Charity podcast with various nonprofit leaders and, people I know to some extent, sometimes just acquaintances. And but this is a podcast episode with friends, people who, Amy and Clay, we've traveled in Kenya together, which is always a deeply bonding experience. I spent around 5 months in Kenya with Just One Africa's partners when I was in college, split over 2 summers. And so I'm just excited. I'm excited to share your story with our listeners, and excited to just honestly reminisce some and reflect some. And I haven't been to Kenya in a while, and I need to get back. But let's start at the beginning of the story of Just One Africa. So tell me about the first time that you went to Kenya. Where were you in the season of life? Clay, you were saying that you both used to have different full-time jobs. What was that first experience in Kenya like, and what did you learn?
It was actually 13 years ago this spring break, which is where our schools are right now. They're on spring break. And instead of taking our kids to the beach or to Disneyland or something that would be very typical for families in our community. We all got on a plane and flew to Kenya with our kids' youth group. So we chaperoned. We were the only parents that went along with the youth pastors, but it really came out of a desire to expose our kids to the world in a very first person experience, and for that love that God has for the world to grow in us. We very much engaged with living on mission as a family here in North Georgia in a variety of ways. But we wanted to also capture in a deeper way God's heart for the world. And we wanted to do that with our kids. They were 10, 13, and 14 years old at the time. And so a little bit young to travel halfway around the world alone. And so we were really thankful for the opportunity to be able to do that on mission as a family. We went to partner with a local leader in Western Kenya. She had an orphanage and a school on the shores of Lake Victoria. She cared for children that were orphaned or abandoned after the post-election violence in Kenya in the late 90s. And then also in that part of Kenya, there's a lot of HIV. And so there are a lot of children that are orphaned due to AIDS. And so along with that, there's issues with waterborne disease, malaria, food insecurity, a lot of issues around gender rights and just access to education for women and girls. So a lot of cultural nuance there. There's over 42 tribes in Kenya. And so as we came to work with this specific local leader, we learned a lot about her tribe and about the community, the tens of thousands of widows that she was working with, and the complexities of issues that she dealt with on a daily basis. And so we very much jumped into a whole nother culture and a whole nother part of God's heart for the world, and got to experience what that looked like.
How did you meet this local leader? Like, what was the original connection?
She was a woman that the church we had attended in California had prayed for the kids that she was caring for. A lot of them had HIV from a very young age or other diseases. And so our pastor had gone and done evangelistic meeting and prayed for people that were sick and were in need of a miracle. And she heard about this gathering, and she came and asked this pastor to pray because she had babies that were dying and needed a miracle. And so our paths crossed with her story through our church.
And then, so you, I guess, sent her an email and said, hey, we would love to visit and bring our family. And
well, it was a really interesting, how God connects those dots, because we could have gone anywhere on a missions trip with our kids youth group. But our youth pastors at the time, they really also wanted to go where God wanted us to go as a youth group. It was their first job as youth pastors, first missions trip. So it was really wanting to do what wasn't just convenient or easy, but also like intentionally what the Lord was asking for the stories that he's building and writing in all of our lives. And so our youth pastor had been doing a Bible study and was reading, her daily devotion, and like, God, I really need an answer. I need to know where we're supposed to go. And she read about a woman in the Bible named Phoebe. And that was the name of the woman who we were eventually going to end up meeting in Kenya. And it was between two different locations. And the Lord really just highlighted, and she said, I didn't even know Phoebe was in the Bible. And I really believe that God wants us to go to Kenya. And so all the work started in earnest to figure out how do we raise the funds and prepare and do all the things to be able to go and be a blessing. And in turn, we learned a lot about God's heart for the orphan, for the widow, and for the needs that are there in so many different ways, and how they address those things from a cultural perspective, and what role, we have here in North America. What is our role in the global body of Christ? So a lot of things we learned, but that's how we got to Western Kenya.
So I know this was 13 years ago. It's not always easy to remember specific details 13 years from things that happened 13 years ago. But I'm curious about it, like if there were any initial culture shocks or any initial surprises on that very first trip to Kenya. And this might be hard to like extrapolate out like who Clay and Amy were now. I mean, since then you've gone to Kenya many times. But what were some of the first, like, wow, this is different?
I mean, go ahead.
One of the things that really stuck out to us, and while we've tried to bring our kids into experiences and living on mission here in the States and working with different organizations that allowed them to experience different cultures, yes, obviously it was some culture shock for all of us. But one of the things that really inspired us was these local leaders in Kenya who are caring for children from vulnerable situations,
Yeah.
who are giving it their all. They have so much dedication. They have so much strength and abilities, but yet are under-resourced. And that was one of the really big factors that we came home with, besides the clean water, which both those two really shaped our whole organization. How can we come alongside local leaders who are caring for these children, who want to do this, who do this every day, but yet need more help with resources?
Yeah, that's fantastic. So one of the things I'm hearing you both say is that you were working to be on mission in the States before you had the idea of starting a global nonprofit that formed partnerships across national borders. You were, as a family, wrestling with, how do we be on mission in the States? And then you get to Kenya and you meet people who are asking, how do we be on mission in Kenya? And so there was a sense of a natural partnership and friendships that get formed over the years. But what went from that first, tell us about going from that first trip to Kenya to actually starting Just One Africa and incorporating this nonprofit. What made you, was there a moment where you knew, gosh, we need to start a nonprofit?
Yeah, it was born out of an experience that we had one day on the shores of Lake Victoria. It was something that is as real today for me. I can go back to it as much as it was 13 years ago. And the local leader that we had come to serve, she invited us to help this widow rebuild her home along with some community members, because it's made out of mud and sticks, and the rains had caused it to start falling over. And her name was Magdalene. And we came into this community, which is very rural, very much off the grid, very little development in this area. Beautiful views right over the lake. It was gorgeous, lots of community around, but also a lot of suffering. And the women in this area primarily all have HIV and also are caring for children and grandchildren with the best that they can, but are also very much struggling because of disease and just access to some of the things that they don't have, like running water, hygiene, food, security, all these things.
Yeah.
So there was this lady named Magdalene, and we were coming into her hut and learning a little bit about her family as we began our day. And there was this bundle laying on the ground, and it almost looked like someone had died. And so I asked, like, what's that? What's going on? And they pulled the sheet back, and there was a baby, maybe about 9 months old, laying under the sheet just on the floor.
Which was dirt.
Which was, a dirt floor, very basic accommodation. And they said that the mom had also HIV, and she had a severe infection, and she could not nurse the baby. And so they were giving the baby water straight out of Lake Victoria. And the baby then had contracted an amoeba, had typhoid, and was essentially dying. And there was nothing they could do about it. And so that, as a mom, greatly impacted me. As I'm standing in front of the mom whose child is literally laying on the floor dying, she herself is suffering. The grandmother, is also in a very difficult situation. She had 7 grandchildren, multiple daughter-in-laws. All the men had died because they don't take the ARVs, because it's supposedly a sign of weakness to try and stay alive. You just die when you die. But all the women
ARVs being antiretroviral therapy,
Yes.
which is the medication regimen for people with HIV/AIDS, which is extremely effective
Yes.
and can give someone who's HIV positive a quality of life that is as if they didn't have the disease. Just saying all this just because, some folks I think still are not aware of how much progress humanity has made in the fight against HIV/AIDS, and some of the myths about HIV/AIDS being a death sentence from the early 2000s I think are still hanging around. Anyways, sorry, don't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, no, it's
That's
important.
very good.
It's important to understand and to realize the impact, the far-reaching impact of what happens when we stop helping provide them to people who it is their lifeblood essentially. And so these women were taking them to make their lives extend and to stay as healthy as possible and caring for their families. But also we're very much struggling to provide access to all the other things that kids need. And so as we learned about what this grandmother was going through, the mom was going through, the baby was going through, it was very overwhelming to be in that circumstance, not as a medical doctor, not knowing anything about really this community beyond just showing up and beginning to learn and hear this personal story. And so knowing what that meant as a mom, I was just like, what do we do? Like, we're here to help build a house, but yet we've also now encountered this other story and these other needs. And so as I walked out of that hut, I looked across, the lake, and I looked to the left and I looked to the right, and I realized that this was not an isolated story. This literally, the story was replicated across, thousands and thousands of homes all across the shores of Lake Victoria. There was issues of waterborne disease that were killing children and were killing families, and also then the issues around HIV and access to food security and medical care, and just the complexity of what these local leaders are dealing with on a daily basis, one family at a time. And also realizing like we're just one family. Like we have just a few days to be here in Kenya. We're here with our kids. We've got our backpacks of granola bars and water bottles, and like, what are we going to do that's essentially going to move the needle for this family in a way that as we, leave, things will be better. We might be able to help rebuild a house, but what about this child? What about this mother? And it almost was like a throw your hands up and like, what difference is it going to make? And then how do we do that across this whole shoreline? But then also feeling very convicted by God in that moment, as he shared, reminded me of the story of the Good Shepherd, leaving the 99 for the one, and the value that he has on one life, and that he left heaven, came to earth for me and for you. And so how much of a priority does he put on one person? And that if we could do what we could for this one family, this whole trip to Kenya would be worth it, even if we couldn't provide any sort of resources for the people around, or we couldn't know all those stories, that this family was worth it. He sees them, he loves them, he cares for them, just like he cares for us. That as one family, we still can make a difference in the life of this one family, and that his heart is for one person. I mean, he demonstrates that on a daily basis. And so there was, conviction as to like, don't look at what you can't do, look at the one in front of you. Yeah. And so Just One Africa was born out of that exchange of learning and understanding and reflecting on who God is, his heart for the world, his heart for the one, and what he calls us to. And so Just One Africa is named very intentionally that, because we believe it takes just one person to make a difference. And we believe that just one person is worth making a difference for. And so that's big to our DNA. And it's very, very personal to that experience, recognizing that maybe we can't change the whole world. God calls us to impact and love and care for the one in front of us. And through that multiplication, the world does change. And we do begin to see a, healthy, connected, restored world, just one person at a time.
Clay, do you have something to add to that?
That's a very good summary. It really did impact us. as we were coming there to help, but yet realizing there's nothing we can do right now to help.
Right.
A second chapter of that story, 7 years later, we were with Phoebe at the farm, and this little boy came up with his mother, and Phoebe introduced me to this little boy, and it was that baby that we thought was going to die. His name was James, and we got to meet him 7 years later, and he is doing fine. And we had brought that family a water filter shortly after we incorporated and became an organization and came back. And that family was one of the first families to receive water filters.
We helped to make sure that there was medical care for that baby and the mom. Like we did try and meet some immediate needs to help preserve life, and then recognize like the bigger conversation around access to clean water. Mom recovered. She was able to get work and a job and start providing, and things did begin to change for that family. But that really was a catalyst for us in starting the organization. So we did come back. We started incorporating in June of that same year. And by December of that same year in 2012, Clay went back to Kenya. We'd raised enough money, I think, for about 60 water filters. And we went back to that very village with Phoebe, and we did our very first distribution of water filters.
So you guys helped James. And a quick note here of the categories of relief and development. And I think Just Run Africa engages with both, but just I think a healthy contextualization of those concepts and saying, okay, this is a time for relief. Like this is a baby who needs medical care now. How do we intervene to provide for that need? And a lot of what you do now is I think some combinations of relief at times and development at times, but I love how you're contextualized and you're not dogmatic about that. Like you're not anti-relief, which and not to say that people are like that, but sometimes it can feel like the conversation around when helping hurts and relief, rehabilitation, development can be kind of anti-relief. When in every community there is a time for relief, if there is an urgent life at stake, thing happening, such as a baby who's sick with a waterborne disease. So I love that. The other thing I want to comment on, and gosh, there's so many places we can go in this conversation, but the other thing I want to comment on is just the idea of helping one person and the sense of agency that gives, I think is really, really crucial. There is one approach to nonprofit work is to say, what is the kind of global problem, and then how do we solve the whole problem? And that is not your philosophy. That's not what I hear as your philosophy. What I hear as your philosophy is, what can I do? What is within my sphere of agency in terms of loving and serving people? And then how do I be faithful to do that thing which isn't my sphere of agency? And what if, and this is kind of the scary, dangerous thought, what if my sphere of agency is actually a little bit bigger than culture tells me it is? Like, and I love this about you, both of you. It's such an inspiration to me of, like y'all are raising some money right now for a high school. And a couple weeks ago, you came over for dinner at my house, and I said, are you working with an agency to do this capital campaign? And Amy, you said, well, we have agency. And I think for listeners who look at massive global problems, who are asking, okay, waiting for government to solve it, maybe, or waiting for someone else to solve it, a big foundation or a big, some rich people, the Gates Foundation or something, instead of doing that, to ask the question, who is the one person who we can positively impact and serve and love and help, and to have actually the courage to be able to say that we do have agency, and that if we pretend or if we neglect the agency God has given us, then we're being, in some sense, unfaithful to that calling. And not to put too harshly, but I think that's what I hear when I talk to y'all of like, let's not just rail about big problems that we can do nothing about. Let's ask God, who's the one person who I can help, and how am I called to be faithful in that next step? So I just think that's really profound and wonderful. And it has produced results and has produced impact. So you brought these 60 water filters in that first water filter distribution. How many water filters has Just One Africa distributed since then and over these 13 years? And about how many people have y'all been a part of providing with access to safe drinking water?
Yeah, that's a great question. I love how you said that. And we really try to live each day open-handed with what is in front of us and what God, what are you asking us to do? And that might be helping a little child, or it might be helping a village. And so over the years, we started with those first 60 filters in 2012, and we have raised funds every year to bring more filters. Currently, to date, we've distributed about 14,000 filters, which has impacted almost 300,000 people. And we have distributed filters in about 196 different villages and communities. So that's been an amazing way that God has allowed us to grow. And we work primarily through our partners. We have an extensive team and network of water ambassadors who we have realized over the years, we need people in community. This is not just an Amy and Clay show. This is about our partners. This is about our water ambassadors and our coordinators who are doing the bulk of the work. Yes, we are providing funds to be able to provide those water filters, but our teams in our various communities that we work are now distributing filters when we're not there. We've trained them so that they can do that on their own. And we have an extensive team around us who are able to go into those communities and sensitize the people about the water filters. And then we have a follow-up program that goes back into those same communities who have received the filters and check on those filters, make sure that they are still working, and just to extend the life basically of those filters to make sure that they are really providing years and years of service. We do feel a responsibility of stewarding our donors' funds well. And yes, we could go to a street corner and pass out filters to anybody who wanted them. And yes, we could distribute thousands of filters that way. But many of those buckets would end up being used to carry fish,
right,
over a short period of time. And so we do an extensive training program prior to the people receiving the filters to show them how to care for the filters, how to take care of them. It's a very easy, simple process. And then we do some basic sanitation and hygiene. And it's really shown over the years the impact. And now we're following up on filters that are 10, 12 years old that are still providing water for those families. And that's an exciting thing.
It's a good return on investment. It's just $65 for one filter. And not a whole lot of things that cost $65 last 10 years, much less a device that saves lives. So it's really, really wonderful to be able to share with sponsors who help us with the Clean Water Program what their investment of $65, whether we have people that give that every month or people donate to our World Water Day or, one times, what a difference they are making. And then the relationships that are formed out of that. It's not just the data, which is important because it helps us prove, or recognize where there's problems, and also shows us the dramatic impact that it makes. But more than anything, it builds a web of relationships that are deep, that serve also the missions of our partners. So if they are trying to help with advocacy and awareness and education on, child marriage issues or gender equality or FGM, female circumcision, like there are other very, very important issues as far as the well-being of children and women that these filters allow, those relationships to form. So there's access to dialogue and to learn and for these practices to shift. which is just as vital as providing clean water.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I have seen the impact of these filters firsthand. I've been on probably half a dozen or so water filter distributions, some deep into the bush of Amblesale, which is always fun and a little bit nerve-wracking when you're driving home and the elephants are coming out because it's the sun's setting and everyone's concerned because they need to get home before the elephants because it's not safe for them. And so I've had that experience. I've also had the experience of riding on a motorcycle to different houses and townships and in that same region to do the follow-up program and to yell out Hodi, which is what you say when you're entering a Kenyan person's home. And they say Karibu, and you say Asante Sana. And then you walk in and, say we're with Just One Africa and, you notice the water filter a lot of times prominently placed in the living room of the house and do a survey to say, what have been the rates of waterborne illness in this family and to collect that data. So I've had that experience as well. And just seen the remarkable impact that such a simple thing as access to safe drinking water can have in places around the world that do not yet have access to safe drinking water. So really believe in this program. If you're a listener, highly encourage you, make a $65 gift. That's not that much. And you would provide a family, a household with safe drinking water for 10 years. And I think some people, just who are wrestling with what to do with large amounts of philanthropic capital, I think the notion that if you gave $65,000 and you could give 1,000 families safe drinking water, that is a great return for a major gift. And it is the kind of thing that is proven. Y'all have the distribution partners to be able to implement something like that. You're already distributing filters at a scale. So anyways, just want to encourage our listeners to dabble in providing safe drinking water. When I was in high school, this is supposed to be an interview, but I'm talking a lot because this is a very personal cause.
Please share.
There's a lot of history.
There's a lot of history. So Simple Charity started as a high school club, a group of seniors at North Forsyth High School. And we raised over the course of that year, I think around $13,000 for Just One Africa through a 5K, through a car wash, and a couple other programs. It might have been less than that. I can't remember the exact number. Regardless, a year later, I went to Kenya with you guys for the first time. And I will never forget going out to a water filter distribution with a group of Maasai mamas, right? Underneath Kilimanjaro in Amblesale. And as these water filters are being distributed, Amy says, the reason that you have these filters today is because Brian and his friends raised money at their high school to pay for these filters to help keep your family safe from waterborne disease. And I will never forget that moment. And, Maasai men are tough. Like, they kill lions. I mean, not like as much anymore. It's not like part of their their traditional, rite of passage anymore. But, Maasai men are tough and they don't cry. And so I'm standing here by all these Maasai women, like really trying hard not to cry. As Amy tells these Maasai mamas that our group of friends in high school provided safe drinking water for their families. And a couple of those women came up to me afterwards and said, Asante Sana, and just thanked me for this small part that me and my friends were playing in this. And it was just this reminder that when we participate in the work of global nonprofits that are doing work with excellence, that are forming strong cross-cultural partnerships, that are leading with humility, that are following up on their programs to ensure the impact and measuring that impact, when we participate in that work, we are making a real difference in the lives of human beings, usually that we will never meet. So when we write that check, we're not just writing a check, we are participating in these stories of life change with real human beings made in the image of God. And I think it's so easy to lose sight of that in our globalized world and just to feel disconnected from the impact. But
It's true.
You know, I always go back to that story and that experience for me when I think about your
Yeah.
water
And
filter
that was
program.
no small little impact, Brian. Every family who receives a filter is a huge impact. And what you guys did as a small high school club turned saved lives, and it's an amazing thing. And we appreciate the work that you and your friends did, even at that time as high schoolers.
And it's
Yeah.
amazing to see where some of those high school students are today and
Yes.
the impact that your efforts made on their lives in recognizing, hey, I can make a difference with my life right where I am with what I have as a high school student, and what that led them to do and explore as, you know, a college student and a young adult. And then you think about the impact on those moms. You know, so many of the families who receive a water filter share with their neighbors, because we are not at the point where we can completely 100% cover an area yet, but we work with those that are most at risk or have medical needs or have children or things like that. And so we put these filters in different homes according to the needs the community shares with us. But there are families who have yet to receive. And so while those families are waiting for their filter, everyone shares. And that's the beauty of the body of Christ and the love that is given freely from this side of the world to the other. And then the love that continues sharing that, you know, with those that are around them. It is a beautiful, beautiful impact of what literally just one person can do. And that's our heartbeat, is that we hope that the donors feel the joy and the meaning and the purpose of their engagement in giving and in praying and in learning about the world and the challenges and the suffering that's there, that it would also inspire and convict them to take action where they live. That it's not just
Yes.
about over there, but it's also about the people in my home, the people in my neighborhood, the people in my schools, the people in my community, the people that don't look like me, that don't talk like me, that have a different life experience, like who's in the grocery store in front of me. Literally, that you begin to see the world differently and the opportunities that surround you for the ones in front of you, where you live and around the world.
That's so good. The scary and powerful notion that we actually have a lot of agency. You know,
we
I
do.
think about this idea in psychology of like learned helplessness. And I think so many of us are living through life with this sense of learned helplessness about the problems in our community and in our world. And we read the headlines and we just feel like everything is out of our control and someone else needs to fix it. But what I love about the way y'all are living your lives, honestly, is to say we actually are not helpless in loving and serving our neighbor. And there's something that everyone can do. Tell me about the future of Just One Africa. So what are you most excited about now? What projects are you currently working on?
The project that we are currently working on, which is probably our largest, it is our largest to date as an organization, is to partner with John and Dorcas Perry, the leaders that work in southern Kenya. They have a primary school and a rescue center, and also, are over many different other initiatives with pastors and with widows and on international levels, but also very much grassroots. And so our project with them is to move forward access to trauma-informed education in their community. A lot of the children that they rescue from unthinkable situations, in partnership with the police and government that ask them to help with these issues around children, they help go then through this primary school to access education as one of the ways of caring and serving them. But then when they reach that high school age, students around the country often go to schools 6-8 hours away from where they live, because that's how the educational system in Kenya typically works. Your class 8 scores determine what high school you are eligible for, and sometimes that takes you quite far. Even if it's quite near, we have found overwhelmingly in 3 different areas of Kenya where we are currently serving, the access to trauma-informed education, period, is like absent. And so the need for caring for children that have been on a healing journey through the work of our partners is essential for them in their growth into their high school years. And we've seen a lot of that, where they have to start over with a lot. They come back, they regress. when they're in lots of other environments where there's bullying, there's sexual assault, there's all kinds of challenges in public education when children are quite far from their caregivers or from their families. And so our partners came to us and said, we really see the need for this. We work really hard to like care and receive and to help restore and provide healing, but then we feel like we lose them when they go back to high school, and then they come
Right.
back and it's like we've lost ground. And we really, really see a need and a value in continuing what we've begun. And so we have started the work of fundraising for a trauma-informed high school. We have land that John and Dorcas actually purchased in 2008 because this was part of their heartbeat and their vision way, way, way back that God had spoken to them about. And they realized they needed to really start with a primary school because most of the girls that are rescued are 10, 13, 14. And while their ages may show they need to be in a higher level class, they've never been to school. And so they need to start at the beginning and then move their way forward. And so this land has been sitting there. It's different from where the primary school is, but it's been sitting for this time
Waiting.
in this season. Yeah. So we launched a campaign called Trailblazers. God really spoke to us about who these children are going to be, this generation around the world that I know He's called to literally blaze trails for the generations behind them, to create access to healing and for restoration within community and within their culture all over the world, how that looks. And so we've invited donors to give towards this vision, to literally blaze a trail to the school so the students can find access to this trauma-informed high school education. And as they receive care and mentorship, discipleship, counseling, and of course, quality education, that they in turn would go out and blaze trails for those that come after them. So there is this beautiful cycle of connection and purpose and actual action that's taking place to restore lives and communities.
This is
Amen.
Go ahead, Brian.
Go ahead, Clay. Yeah, you can go ahead.
This is a full high school campus. It's 7 acres with 12 buildings, and there is nothing like this, I don't think, in all of Kenya. We know that there's nothing like this as a trauma-informed high school, but the quality of education and excellence that this school will provide is something that is not seen in Kenya. So this is a large project for Just One Africa. It's bigger than anything we've ever done before. And as our partner John Perry, he says, "Oh, this is just a faith project." And yes, it is a huge faith project for us. We have raised enough money for the first three buildings, and then we will raise funds for the next 3 buildings. We need another $1.5 million to do the next 3 buildings after the first 3 buildings, and that will allow us to open the campus on a limited scale for the senior high school, and then we will continue fundraising the rest of it. But the total cost of this project is about $6 million. And so it is very much a faith project and allows us to stay dependent on the Lord for this. He has asked us to do this project, and it's something that is really requiring our dependence 100% on Him, and He keeps blowing us away time and time again. It is just so exciting to see.
So far, y'all have raised, correct me if I'm wrong, but about $1.1 million for this project.
That's
so
right.
well on your way. We're celebrating recently a 6-figure gift to contribute to this project as well. And really the impact of building this high school and to educate a generation. And then Amy, to your point, we talk a lot about education and Simple Charity as just one of those interventions that just gives you such a bang for your buck in terms of philanthropy. The literature is robust that when you educate kids, they are more productive their whole lives. It is a powerful tool for democracy. If you have a more educated, if you have more girls graduating from high school, those girls are going to become politically engaged, more likely to be politically engaged, and more likely, there's actually evidence that when you educate girls in developing countries, you're more likely to have a democracy like a decade or two later. And so, it's a powerful tool for family, and it just impacts all sectors of society, to be able to have high quality education in a place where, like you're serving, where rates of people attending and graduating from secondary school are substantially lower than, a lot of, certainly in America and a lot of places in the world. It's just a tremendous opportunity for really a generational impact in that community. So I commend, where can people learn more about this project? Is there a website or?
Yeah, the best place is our website. You can go to
Awesome.
justoneafrica.org, and you can learn about the Trailblazers campaign and about where we are in that process. Our desire isn't just to build buildings and to create a school that exists to educate. As much as it is a goal, we want to make sure it's also a place that facilitates healing. We don't want to just build bigger buildings and create spaces for larger brokenness. And we know as humans, like, we're all broken and in need of a savior. And so as we join hands with our local partners and see their vision with what God has called them to and their yes, we want to help facilitate them with the resources they need to help healing and wholeness grow in their community that will impact their country and even the world. And so the issues around poverty, the other systemic things that they deal with on a regular basis, education really, like you said, the research shows, that if you educate a girl, families in poverty, the rates dramatically climb out of that. And so we want to create spaces where wholeness and healing happen. And so we're as much about creating the space for that, but also building up the people.
Yeah.
So our website is the best place, or social media. You can also find out, what we're up to in the trips. Sign up on our website for our newsletters, and you can watch this journey and also join in what God is doing.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I do want to say, I'm not trying to single out girls of educating boys, as it is important to educate boys and girls, but in a lot of developing countries around the world, and especially in sub-Saharan Africa, girls are disproportionately excluded from secondary school. And so that's why we're really harping on the power of educating young girls. Amy, you were talking about being healthy, and I think that this is something I wrestle with a lot in a job that is missional, in a job that is a ministry and is focused on people around the world who are suffering around these issues of poverty and injustice around the world. How do you yourselves stay spiritually healthy as you do this work? And how do you stay grounded in who Jesus is, the good news of the gospel, as you are really in a career intentionally leaning into these places of suffering and these stories of trauma? So what does that look like for both of you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it is a real risk factor, I would say, especially when you work on mission in these lanes, and even more vital to the health of us as individuals, and as a married couple, yes, and as our organization is very engaged on the daily in these areas. And so several things we do pretty consistently is to have time every day with the Lord.
Yes.
To center and to ground us in the truth of his word, because we wake up. Kenya is already been awake because of the time change. Our phones are already sitting there with messages and emails and challenges and things that need our attention. But to make sure that we're starting our day first centered and grounded as much as we can in the truth of God's word. And so I read a lot. I intentionally seek out resources that will help to keep my perspective in a hopeful lane and something that is resourcing me to challenge me as a believer, to challenge me as a woman, to challenge me as a friend, and as a leader of an organization that works internationally. So it's a constant recognizing of my dependency on the Lord, that there's always more to know, there's always more to learn, and trying to balance that with rest and not trying to work more hours, do more things, raise more money, just push the envelope, which we have been at fault at. When you're in this kind of work and you're hearing stories of rescue and traumatic situations. And you're right, there are crises and there are emergencies and there are things we are proximate to that move our heart and want us. I mean, we want to be involved to stop the bleeding on that side.
Right.
But also recognizing we are not God.
Mm.
And when we put ourselves in the position of trying to be God and try to provide or try and hold the solutions, we run out every time. And so recognizing that we need to first know how to posture ourselves before God, and then out of his pouring into us, we then have what we need to pour into others. And so that has been really, really important, just every day, recognizing this is his work. We are his people, and that it's through him that things will continue to move forward. Regular counseling is something also that I participate in. It's really helpful for me to understand how to offload the burdens and some of the things that I wrestle with in processing, things that I hear, things that I see. We are learning more and more about what being proximate to trauma and people that are hurting and suffering, and what that does to those that are hearing it, and our partners that are in the weeds of it every day. So how do we best care for those that are continually in the deep end of hardship and suffering, so we can stay healthy, we can stay responsive, not reactive, and that we know when we need to set things down to replenish, and then how to get back up and just do the next thing. So regular rhythm of some community, which looks different for us because we're in Kenya about half the year. So we're constantly straddling two worlds. We're constantly unpacking and repacking and catching up and preparing and, connecting and disconnecting. It is challenging, but it really does remind us that we need to, we have a deep dependency on the Lord.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. Yeah, so many good nuggets there just for me personally, and I'm sure for our listeners too. Clay, anything that you would add to that?
She summed that up very beautifully. I think the biggest thing is just realizing that we, Amy and Clay, do not have the capacity to do this or the capability really without being fully dependent on the Lord. And when we ask God to be a part, to lead us in everything that we do, not to join us in our endeavor, not to bless our work, Father. It's his work, and we are just his hands right now, and he has given us the strength to continue to do this work. But being fully dependent on the Lord really grounds you, because it's not something that we can do in our own strength.
Yeah. I am challenged, convicted by that, and encouraged to remember that in my own life, that we are all dependent on the Lord all the time. And I want to also just appreciate you two, to honor you two. I have learned a tremendous amount from Clay and Amy Churchill. And, I have a major in global health from Duke University, and learned more in the 2 summers I spent with you guys than I did in all my classes at Duke, honestly. And just to actually see in action how to form cross-cultural partnerships, to implement a public health intervention, to do it with excellence, to do it with monitoring and evaluation and follow-up, and the extent to which you both have just stewarded the role that God has given you is really inspiring and challenging to me. I think the way that you steward your relationships with donors is phenomenal. A lot of your donors have a fantastic just experience of getting that sense of the proximity that you have. And I just want to, and I know all this is not what you guys maybe want me to even say on a podcast, but I just want to honor the fact that the Lord has used both of you to play a role in providing clean, safe drinking water to literally hundreds of thousands of people throughout Kenya, and you're not done. And I just want to honor that fact that as we are, all of us, pursuing dependence on the Lord in faithfulness, that, John Mark Comer says, like, God gives us dreams, and then the path a lot of times is, I think harder, slower, longer, and better than what we expect. So, Lord, we want to help baby James. God, we want to help kids like baby James to have access to safe drinking water. And then there's this 13-year journey. We didn't even, I think, probably scratch the surface of all of the challenges in the journey and the moments of, overcoming something and navigating something new, learning something new, and the constant discomfort of it all, of being proximate and being on mission. And yet this is just how God works. And he refines us in this process and in this journey and makes us more into a person of love and more into a person who looks like Jesus. And so God is simultaneously using us to accomplish his mission, to advance his kingdom, and refining us into someone who's a little bit more like the person of Jesus. And what I want to end this conversation on is just, what are you learning right now in this season about what it means to love generously, like how Jesus loves us?
Yeah, I would say a theme that we continue to come back to as we realize and recognize our deep dependency, need for dependency, which is so helpful for us as Americans, to not be paralyzed by what we see or by what we hear or how we feel about ourselves, which then doesn't allow us to move forward with loving others and even loving God. It really interrupts his purpose that he has for our lives and the work that he has for us to do. And so there are two things that we've learned, we've come to ask ourselves daily is, God, what do you want us to know today? There's a lot of things that we can know in the world. There's a lot of things that we can consume about, information, whether it's politics or culture or local news or national or international. There is always so much to know. But God, what do you want me to know today? Because the things that we may need to know, we may not be able to scroll and find. We may not even be able to read in a book or talk to a person, but God knows what we need to know today. And so being intentional and asking him, God, what do you want me to know today? And then what do you want me to do about it? And that really helps us to channel the resources, whether that's our love, our time, our attention, our efforts, wherever we are. It helps us to be doing what he asks us to do. So we're not over here paving a trail that he's like, I'm not asking you to be over there. I never asked you to do anything about that thing you thought you were supposed to do. Like, I'm asking you to sit with me. So it can be so much opposite of what we think. We know things, okay, we're off and running, but what is he actually wanting us to do? Are we supposed to, what is it? But without letting the Lord guide and direct us with what do we need to know, which means we need to be careful about what we consume. It doesn't mean the more we know, the better position we'll be able to be, and to be effective or to be successful or to be impactful, or, that it's not how we think about those actions and how we spend our time. It really is a stewardship of our lives. And if we want to honor God with our lives and our love for him and for those around us, the two greatest commandments, then like, God, we need your help to know how to do that and who we need to do that with. So what do you want us to know today? And then what do you want us to do about it? And let that order our steps and not get distracted with what's around us, which will burn us out. Been there, done that many times. And it's still learning. But like, okay, when I'm feeling anxious, when I'm feeling overwhelmed, when I'm feeling fill in the blank, okay, I'm trying to do things in my own strength, out of my own efforts, with my own information. So I need to stop and say, God, what do you want me to know that I don't know? And then what do you want me to do about it?
What a fantastic word for our age of information overload. And there's something that's particular about love. we love a person. We love it takes action. And so to actually say, I'm a limited person with limited brain space, limited capacity. And in order to love well, I have to actually embrace my limitedness and to say, I'm going to carve out the distractions and to pay attention to what God would have me pay attention to, and then bring my love to that person or to that project or to that specific thing that God is calling me to do. And again, it's embracing our own agency. It's realizing that we are just one person, and yet that is not an excuse. It's actually a reason to focus on what just one person can do. And actually what just one person can do is far beyond what the cultural messages we're receiving about our own capacities actually are. Clay, how about you? What take us home, and I'll give you the final word here. What are you learning about what it means to love generously like Jesus?
Now, Amy summed that up very well, and that we kind of learned that from Jamie Winship. What do you want us to know, and what do you want us to do? And I remember listening to a podcast by him, and just, wow, that is really the essence of what we need to do day by day. And in remaining dependent on God, I'm reminded of Gideon and the battle that God asked him to do, to take on. And Gideon said, great, I'll bring 30,000 people. And God's like, no, that's too many. Okay. And God whittled it down multiple times to like 300 people. And Gideon was like, how on earth can we do this, Father? This is too big for us. And yet God showed up and God did it. And when God asks us to take these projects on, we're just two. I understand our name is just one, but
just one couple.
We're just one couple.
Just one couple,
and
yes.
We really don't have resources. We're not wealthy. We're not, we're dependent on God to bring in the resources. And yet that's such a beautiful thing of community and allowing our donors to partner with us. And, God gave us the ability to travel and to do the work hands on. But many people don't have that capacity. They can't go, but they can give and they can pray. And we cherish those prayers. We really do. And so when God asks us to build a high school that's so far out of our reach, he said, I will do this. You just start. And
so we're looking for the 300. We're looking for those people that God's calling to be a part of what he's doing. And it's not about numbers. It's about the individuals that God has intended to be a part of what he's doing. And so positioning ourselves like, God, what do you want us to know? What do you want us to do? It allows us to posture ourselves to be effective for the joy and the purpose and the meaning he has for each of our lives, and for good, important, lasting work to happen, which I think is really what all of us want to be about. We want to be about things that are good and are helping the world become more connected and safe and loving and kind and restored. But often we feel at a loss at how to do that. And really we can't on our own. But as God builds his kingdom through us, we get to be a part in all of the places we stand around the world. And we get to see that happen when we say yes to the next thing that he's called us to through his love. And it's a journey we're on every day.
Yes.
Some days you wake up and you're like, okay, let's go, and other days you're like, I quit. I don't even know, like, how are we, what? But I'm so thankful that the Lord is faithful regardless of our faithfulness, that when we are not, he is. And that's so encouraging and reassuring that even before we prayed the prayer or know what we need, he's already provided a way forward, and he's just waiting for us to get on the page with him. So the story's still being written, and there are lives and there is important work still to be done and lives to be touched. And so as long as God has us on this planet, regardless of where we are, we want to continue to live out that just one value, and regardless of who's in front of us. And we're thankful for many people that have also embraced and that resonates with, because our world is in need, a desperate need of hope and safe connections and authenticity and integrity. And so we have a responsibility as believers to show up in all the spaces that God gives us to let the world know actually there is something that is solid and is true and is everlasting. And we get to demonstrate that through our lives as God enables us. So we're really grateful for you, Brian, and the way that you show up, and the ways that you have mobilized and helped thousands and thousands and thousands of high school students and college students to engage in loving the world and loving the poor, and recognizing also our need for a Savior, that we are also impoverished in so many ways. And if it weren't for Jesus, we would all be lost. And so I really am grateful for you and the work of Simple Charity. You have moved the needle in so many ways.
Yes.
For people to recognize who they are and whose they are. And in doing that, the world is changing one person at a time.
Well, thank you, Amy. I'm very grateful for you as well. And for Clay, I think y'all have been trailblazers in my life of modeling excellent nonprofit leadership. And I have so much to learn from you and so much I have learned from you. So I'm grateful for your time on our podcast today. Grateful for all of your work and service. Grateful for our friendship. And I'm excited about what God's going to do next. You can learn more about Just One Africa at justoneafrica.org. That's justoneafrica.org. And the invitation to grow this week is to serve just one person. That's it. Find a way to serve one person. Maybe that's by writing an encouraging note, or making a small donation to a charity, or even just by offering to do dishes at home. Pursue faithfulness to identify who is in your agency to love, and love that one person that you have the ability to love this week. Thank you to Michael Hansen for editing this episode, Grace Sukach for the podcast art, and of course to Amy and Clay Churchill for sharing their stories. If you have feedback on this episode, you can reach me at brian@simplecharity.org. Next time, I'll share a conversation I had with student leaders who are advancing the mission of International Justice Mission, or IJM, from their college campuses. These leaders are an inspiration to me as they fight human trafficking and global violence against the poor, despite the busy demands of their college schedules. I hope you'll join me as we continue to learn to love generously like Jesus. Have a great rest of your week.